Hey guys, today I'm going to be talking about PvP and in particular what kind of gear you should be trying to get. I mean, no one really knows how PvP is going to work. The assumption right now is that it's going to be arena-based combat, maybe with teams, maybe not, uh, and it's going to be something with like respawns, so you're just trying to get as many kills for your team or for yourself as possible. So this has some implications for the kind of stuff you would want to do PvP. I don't even know if we're going to be using our own gear that we farmed up in the PvP, or if it's going to be some special kind of line of gear like you have in WoW and other games. But I think it pays off to at least start thinking about what you would want, because you can probably get that stuff relatively cheap now, and maybe not so much later. So I'm telling you these things so you have something to think about and you can make your own decisions, but I don't want this to be treated as investment advice. I definitely don't want to have people knocking on my door if PvP turns out to be different than what I'm saying here. Anyways, so the first thing I'm thinking about is about the resists. You're probably going to want a lot of physical resistance, and the reason for that is because, partially due to a bug on how weapons are rolled, all of the top damage weapons have physical damage instead of arcane or cold or anything like that. So let me show you first, just to prove it right. These are the highest DPS weapons on the auction house, and you're going to notice that all of them have plus minimum and plus maximum damage instead of arcane or cold or whatever. And this is a very weird way that mod works, and I'm not sure why this is the case, but it just happens to be that all the top DPS weapons on the auction house are going to be physical. So probably that you're mostly worried about that. And in addition to that, the weapons that have arcane, let me just find one here. Alright, so we've got one weapon with arcane here, and you can notice that it talks about having plus damage and then also plus arcane damage. So maybe only half of the DPS from this weapon is actually arcane. We don't actually know. We can't test that because you can't actually hit players with your weapons. But maybe physical would help you against this weapon as well, just not entirely, right? In addition to that, I think some classes have certain skills that are always going to be a type of damage, and you could try to prepare for that. For example, I think Arcane Resist in particular is one that you might want to try to get. I don't know what the builds will be when PvP comes out, so I'm not going to recommend specific ones, but I definitely wanted to point out this one about the weapons. I think this is going to be pretty important. And since I'm already talking about weapons, let me also bring up that the cold damage weapons always apply a little debuff of slow to your enemy. The problem is that they have such low DPS as you can see here. Maybe this is something that you want to switch to. Maybe this is something you want to have on an offhand. I'm not really sure, but it's just something to think about. Cold weapons apply a slow, right? So remember that. Now for the rest of the stats that you're looking for, there's a stat called crowd control reduction or something like that. Let me find it here. It's available on helms, rings, amulets, and the shield. So let's try to find that here. Here we go, crowd control reduction. So this is going to reduce the amount of time that you're stunned and all that stuff, and it stacks multiplicatively. So I don't know how much of it you want. If you're searching for this stat, an important thing to know is that the auction house is a little bugged on it right now. Like you would think that for searching for 10%, you just type in 10 like everything else, right? MF and crit damage. But instead you have to type 0.1. This is actually 10% for crowd control reduction. So let's find some amulets here. I don't know. Anyways, you can get that stat pretty high, and I think that's going to be important for the following reason. There's many ways to get CC going in PvP, and being able to mitigate that is very important. Let's talk about that then. So I made a little thing here, and these stats are normally ignored right now, but I think they might become very important later on. And basically, each slot has a chance to have a CC on hit. It gives you a chance to stun or slow or whatever. And this is potentially very strong. If you have, say, one of each of these things, one chance on each, right? On each slot, you could be, I don't know, maybe 30% of the time you could be applying some nasty debuff every time you hit them, right? So if you just imagine like standing there and hitting a guy, and then he's getting rooted and frozen and stunned, and like, you know, every 3 hits something terrible is happening to him. It could be really strong. I think getting these pieces now is probably a decent idea. You're not going to pay very much for it, I don't think. And of course, getting the, you know, one that's still strong for PvP is going to be tricky. But anyways, just to mention this then, all the armor pieces up to the amulet over here can have 5% chance to for each of these properties. And then the weapons and the shields can have 2.6%. However, two-handed weapons can have up to 5% as well. So you could have up to 9 things here giving you 5% each. And I think that turns to around 30%. I'm not going to do the math on that right now. But, you know, I'm sure if, especially for like a ranged character like a demon hunter, being able to knock back and slow and just keep people away from him, I think that's going to be really strong and something you should look into. Alright, so my next thing I want to talk about is blocking. I think that having a shield in PvP is going to be huge, and the reason for that is because, I mean, people are worried so much about the big burst and all that damage that people are doing, right? But the truth is that in PvP, damage is going to be slow. I'm fairly certain this is going to be the case with certain skills, like I mean, every class has very strong defensive options, and on top of that, we're going to be stacking resist, we're going to have a lot of armor, we're going to have a bunch of stuff that's reducing the damage. I remember that in before patch point 103, when I had a super tank barb, I had about 98% reduction on all damage taken, something like that. I think right now it should not be too hard to keep, say, 95% reduction and still have some very nice damage, right? So if I'm taking 1/20th of the damage that's coming in, suddenly 100k DPS or 200k DPS doesn't look that scary anymore. If I take 1/20th of 200k DPS, that's only 10k DPS, right? And with cooldowns and avoiding damage, that's could be potentially a long fight. Now, here's where the blocking comes in, right? A Sacred Shield blocks up to almost 5,000 damage from a hit. And if you're reducing the damage that you take by 95% and then block it, that could negate the hit entirely, right? You got to remember that some enemies in Inferno hit you for like 200,000, and then that gets reduced down to a small amount, right? So that's the same thing is going to happen in PvP, and you could block the entire amount of hits. So if you have like a, I don't know, a Storm Shield and then some, you know, Helm of Command or even a Justice Lantern, you like blocking 50% of attacks, it could be very strong in terms of survivability. I think that's definitely going to be worth it compared to like dual wielding or even using a two-handed weapon. So I think shields are good. Find a good shield, and remember that shields can have CC reduction, they can have any CC on hit, and they'll also have, you know, big block and that kind of stuff. So the last thing I want to talk about is sustain, like how are you going to heal? Now, I mean, they're probably going to have some health globes or something like that to give you health back. I don't think they want to be like a battle of attrition or something with people slowly dying. So maybe the health globe stat is interesting. The plus health on globes goes up to like 12,000 something on a single piece. So getting 12,000 extra health when you pick one of those is going to be pretty good. I don't know if there's going to be health globes or not, so definitely don't, you know. Again, this is not investment advice. I'm just telling you what's possible, and then make your own decision. I definitely don't recommend lifesteal. If you think about it, like, I don't know if there's going to be a reduction, like in Inferno, to 20% of the value, but even if there's not, 3% lifesteal, right? Let's pretend that all of that's going in. Then a player might have like 60,000 health, right? So that's the maximum amount of damage that you're going to do to them, 60,000. And 3% of that is only 1,800 health. That's not something that you want to invest a lot in. Life on hit would probably be much better, though I'm not sure if that's going to be good either because, well, it's hard to say exactly how the thing is going to go down. Like the PvP, maybe it's a quick burst, maybe it's a more sustaining kind of fight, and it's hard to say. I think that regen is going to be good as well, because maybe in between your fights, or it depends on the size of the map, right? Can you run around and avoid damage for a little bit while the regen ticks up? Maybe having 1,000 regen or something could be potentially very strong if you're just trying to avoid damage for 10 seconds and then you regen up quite a bit, right? So definitely lifesteal is out. I think the other ones can be interesting. I'm more concerned about getting health when I'm in between fights than during them, though I think life on hit is still, I mean, it just adds to the damage that you can take, right? You're just healing more during the fight, and yeah. So I think that's about it I had to talk about. I think you can make some good decisions and prepare yourself for PvP. I don't know when it's coming out, but now's the time to buy gear if we're going to be using the gear that we can find on the auction house, right? Don't want to do it when everyone else is looking for the same stuff. Price is going to be 10 times as high. So good luck, guys.